Fairy Dirt by Bonnie Thomley. Chapter 1. The morning fog was unusually thin as Brynn made her way to school. Normally at this time of day, you could barely see anything just a few paces in front of you. She walked alone, as was her normal morning routine. She could see the other fairies walking together about 30 feet ahead of her in the distance. They were chatting and laughing as if they didn't have a care in the world.
Did you hear that Ashtaline is dating one of the elders' sons?
What? Which one? Please not Brayden. He is way out of her league.
She wishes. No, it's one of the lesser ones. Josh, I think. But anyways, he's been buying her all kinds of things, and word on the street is that she is about to get a sweet new car.
Must be nice to enjoy some of that elder power.
Shallow bitches. It was fine with her that they excluded her from their clique. She had been different her entire life, and she had finally come to terms with that. They weren't the type of people that made good friends anyway. There was no real loyalty. Brynn wasn't as pretty as the other girls. She definitely wasn't what you would expect a fairy to look like. Fairies, by general rule, were blonde with green eyes, bouncy and very shimmery. Their platinum hair usually had a rainbow undertone to it when the light caught it just right. It was beautiful. Humans go to hair salons and pay hundreds of dollars for that look. Fairies had it naturally, but not Brynn. She had light brown hair with ombre blue tips, blue eyes, and there was certainly no shimmer to her. Even her wings were different. Normal fairy wings were silky and butterfly-like. Hers were fluffy, feathery, and white, identical to angel wings. She felt like such a freak. She just sighed at the thought of being an outcast and focused on her walk to school. The summers in the South were hot, but they were beautiful. The scent of honeysuckles perfumed her walk to school. It was a smell that she could never get tired of. She inhaled deeply, letting the floral arrangement linger in her nose, savoring the moment as she saw her school up ahead. She was thankful that she went to a normal high school with human kids. It was easy for her to blend in with them. She looked like all of the humans. They could tell that something was different with the other fairies, but Brynn just looked like an ordinary teenager. In that way, she didn't mind how she looked. That was the only case, though.
We're going to the beach tonight. Are you in?
Max asked as Brynn joined her group of friends standing on the sidewalk in front of the school. She took a quick glance around. The other fairies had already disappeared from sight. She let the thought of them fade away as she focused all of her attention on Max. That wasn't hard to do. Max moved to town in the middle of the school year from Madigan, which was several towns away. Brynn thought that he was absolutely beautiful. His thick, dark hair set off his hazel, almost golden eyes. He was tall and very well built. He looked older than a lot of the other boys at her school. She loved the way his t-shirts clung tightly to his biceps, which were bigger than most of the guys there as well. It was amazing to her that a boy who looked the way that he did was so down to earth. His sculpted jock appearance would ordinarily suggest otherwise. He was laid back and easy to carry on a conversation with. It was refreshing. Even if she wasn't crushing hard, she would still enjoy spending time with him. "I can't go anywhere after school. I have to study tonight," Brynn said with a sincere frown. Max assumed that she meant either studying scripture or Bible stories. This was an excuse that he had gotten used to getting from her. She relied on a religious facade to hide the truth about what she was. If someone found out that fairies were real, and they actually did believe any of it, there would be serious consequences. It was instilled in them from the day they were born, that one of the reasons their race had survived for so long was because of the stringent secrecy. It was also because of that secrecy that Brynn couldn't be involved in any type of after-school club or extracurricular activity. No Girl Scouts, no softball, just school. Most of the teenaged fairies wondered why they were even forced to go to a human school if they weren't supposed to get too close to people. They were told by the elders that it was a necessary step to learn to blend in with the human race. Public school was the best way to learn how to do that. She was allowed to have a few friends, though, and she spent as much time with them as possible. That went double for Max.
I was afraid that would be your answer. I thought your family usually considered letting you out of the house on Friday nights. What's with the sudden change?
Max's sad puppy dog eyes would have made most girls cave and break the rules. He was disappointed at her response, but something about it made him feel a bit skeptical. It always felt like she was holding something back, but he couldn't put his finger on it. His expression gave his skepticism away, so Brynn knew she needed to pony up more information to sell her bullshit story. I have been slacking off all week, and my mom isn't very happy about it. I guess this is part of my punishment. She knows it will torture me. Seriously, it's worse than waterboarding. He was right. There had been occasions here and there where she could be out after school on Fridays. It was usually for a school function. Even then, she had to have documentation of the event to show her mom, and someone had to go with her, like a chaperone. They were always obvious about it, too. It was embarrassing and a total pain in the butt. Totally not worth the trouble.
Okay then, but it won't be as fun without you.
Max leaned in a bit closer.
You were really the only one I wanted to hang out with.
He whispered low enough that no one else could hear it. His soft breath on her neck made her shiver a bit. Despite the shiver, every other part of her turned red hot. She hoped he didn't notice. She really wished that she could go to the beach. The salt air, Max shirtless in the water. Ugh, it was what her daydreams were made of. She just smiled and shrugged her shoulders at him. The warning bell rang, and they headed into the school. Brynn walked as closely to Max as she could. She hated having to hide her feelings for him, but she had no choice. Telling him that he made her feel like a volcano erupting in the middle of a snowstorm would surely land her in a significant amount of trouble. She wished that she could just be truthful with him, though. How could she ever hope to keep a friendship with him if there wasn't trust? She tried to avoid further conversation on the matter for the rest of the day. The more it was discussed, the more he could have a chance to get suspicious. Quickly coming up with answers to his questions wasn't her forte. He was extremely quick-witted. She envied that about him. He had a comeback for everything. Trying to get anything past him was going to be challenging, so they simply enjoyed each other's company in the classes that they shared until it was time to go home. She hadn't told Max a complete lie. She did have to study something. After school, it was time to practice magic, and she really had been avoiding it throughout most of the week. It might as well have been the plague or something. Who could blame her? She was terrible at casting spells. It was humiliating. She had spent most of her time in her room listening to music and reading instead this week. She loved her bedroom. It was her escape. Her queen-sized bed rested underneath a white canopy that hung from a mahogany 4-post bed frame. The oversized light blue silk comforter perfectly matched the curtains on the opposite side of the room. There were shelves full of books and CDs that she listened to over and over. It was pretty outdated, but using the internet was not really allowed. Not having entertainment apps to use left no choice but to listen to music the old-fashioned way. She was lucky to even have a cell phone, even if it was just a primitive flip phone with a crappy camera. Either way, her room was calm and serene, and though it was her favorite room in the house, it was lonely. It was definitely better than being stuck outside, feeling like a fool in front of everyone when her spells backfired. Which was pretty much every time. She could never manage to execute her spells correctly. Even though the ones that she chose to try were often trivial, they all seemed to go awry. She once tried to turn a puppy into a miniature pony and ended up with a giant, angry goat. It ran around the property, knocking the other fairies down and ravaging the garden before she was able to turn it back into a dog. It was so humiliating, almost as embarrassing as her fluffy white wings. The other's wings were so shiny and beautiful. Even the boy's wings were superior. They were massive and masculine. If her wings were out, she felt like she was leaving a trail of white feathered fluff behind her. She was just happy to have at least perfected the spell to make them disappear. Well, they didn't completely disappear, They just turned into what looked like angel wing tattoos on her back. It was very intricate, and it covered her entire back. Luckily for her, that was currently a somewhat trendy tattoo to have. That made wearing tank tops a possibility. It was pretty much the only spell that she had ever gotten right. Schoolwork was so easy for her, though, so she devoted most of her time to it. She was smart enough to ease, though, everything. It was a breeze. There was nothing complicated in that aspect of her life, and that was a relief. It was too bad only half of her time was spent at school. Please like and subscribe for more free audiobook content.